Many of the aspiring marine biologists, or even early career marine biologists, or even late career marine biologists, or mid-career marine biologists like myself, we all love the ocean. That's what we do. We get inspired by being on the ocean, by doing field work, by getting in the water, getting wet, whether it be in a sub, whether you don't want to get wet in sub, but whether it be getting wet by a dive or on the water in a smaller boat in the ocean. We love the ocean. We love what we see. Every trip is different, and it's always inspiring to see. In fact, a lot of us, when we were growing up, got inspired by the Jacques Cousteaus and the David Attenboroughs and the Shark Weeks and the National Geographics and all the different documentary type shows where we actually saw and got inspired, be like, you know what, that's what I want to do when I grow up. But we're going to hear from OceanX and talking about how inspiration can lead towards solution to the ocean. And OceanX, if you don't know, is an organization, a nonprofit organization that explores the ocean, and it brings that exploration to you right in your living room or right in your bed or wherever you're watching on your phone or on your iPad, wherever you can see National Geographic or a program on BBC like Blue Planet. This is OceanX bringing you the stuff that they see each and every day. And I have Vincent Parabon, who is the co-CEO and Chief Science Officer on OceanX, to be able to talk to you about what the message that OceanX wants to do in the future. They've been really looking forward to bringing you, the very best of media that they can provide on OceanX. Some of my good friends, Dr. Nathan Robinson and Melissa Marquez, have been on the shows on OceanX and been able to show what that boat can do, also what they can do from the boat, and be able to get all that information to you, not only for science, but for governments, but to you. So we're going to talk about a little behind the scenes of OceanX, how it got started and where it's going in terms of bringing you not only the wonderful things about the ocean, but the solutions so that we can protect the ocean. And it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of optimism to look forward to in the future. So let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, it's a special one. It's a special one for me because I'm honored to have Vincent Parabon on the program to talk about OceanX. Now, he is the co-CEO and the Chief Science Officer. He's got the origin story of OceanX. He's got the passion about not only what OceanX brings, but what OceanX wants to bring in the future. So not only the media that they've built for this beautiful vessel that goes around the world and takes samples and does observations and does beautiful science so that they can help governments from all over the world tackle what they need to tackle, right, for their governmental things. Essentially, they need science or they need to collect data. OceanX is there. That's what the vessel's there to do. That's what the organization's there to do. That's what the people on the boat are there to do, and they do amazing work. Plus, they have a whole media side of it where they bring the information to you right to your tablet, your phone, your TV, in your living room, in your home, on the bus, on the train, wherever you're watching it from. You can get all this information on National Geographic, BBC, their YouTube channel. It's just everywhere, and it's great to be able to be inspired by that, because we've all been inspired by something that, like what OceanX is doing in the past, right? Before there was OceanX, there was Jacques Cousteau, there was David Attenborough, there was, for Canada, David Suzuki. There were a lot of different people bringing, and of course Dr. Silva Earle, bringing the information that we see in the ocean, the beauty of the ocean, to us in our homes. And I think that's what the benefit of media is. And when you have an independent organization, it's not part of any government, just like you do with OceanX, they can do a lot more and they can speak up a lot more. And they do, and it's really great. But they're not only just speaking up and waving the finger at governments or anything like that. What they're looking for is they're working to partner with people, with organizations, with governments to find solutions so that they can talk about solutions to you. They can bring the solutions to you and say, hey, you know what? There's hope for the ocean. It's not all doom and gloom. We're going to be able to get through a lot of this stuff, but we got to start looking at building businesses, for-profit, non nonprofit. We're going to have to look at there's opportunity to make money in this so that people can actually profit off of saving the ocean, off of saving the planet. And these are big, big ideas and small ideas that will benefit the ocean, that will benefit this planet, that will benefit you and I. And I think that's what I love about the message that OceanX is going to bring in the future. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, bringing you a little bit of behind the scenes and sort of the strategy that OceanX is doing through Vincent Parabon. I appreciate him giving his time to be able to talk to me. He came to us from Cape Verde. That's awesome. I think it's amazing. I'm looking forward to this interview. I hope you are too. So here's the interview with Vincent Parabon, CEO and Chief Science Officer of OceanX. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Vincent, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about OceanX?
I am, Andrew. Excited.
All right, on.
Good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you. I am super excited for this because OceanX has been on like my top 5 lists of people I wanted to interview and organizations I want to get to know more of. So I really appreciate you reaching out to be on the podcast. This is a true honor for me. We're going to get into OceanX, just sort of like the origin story, the purpose of OceanX, what you guys do, some of the cool projects that you've done in the past, and maybe some that you can tease for the future. We're going to get into all of that. But first, Vincent, why don't you just kind of let us know who you are and what you do?
I will. First of all, I just would like to say it's great to be here. I think what you do is terrific. Protecting the ocean is OceanX. So that's a good segue into the concept of OceanX. So OceanX, the quick origin story is that Ray Dalio and Mark Dalio, Ray being the father, Mark being the son, began diving together when Ray was a bit older in life. And Ray was sort of inspired when he was young by Cousteau, but didn't think much about the ocean until later in life when he started diving with his sons. And, he became aware that the ocean, first of all, it's magnificent, but that the world was not appreciating it as much, and that there was a lot of troubles in the ocean, that there's a lot of problems with the ocean. And I think Ray just had one of those moments that Ray has where he decided, let's try something here. Let's see if something happens. And this ship, Aleutian, the original vessel that we had, came on the market, and Ray, being a very spontaneous guy, just said, let's buy it. And he's not a yacht guy.
Right.
So he's got small boats, but he's not like, I'll buy a yacht. So this thing came online, and it was a research vessel. He's like, okay, it's available. So without much thought, he bought it, I think. I don't want to say that, but he didn't. He bought it. He said, let's see if this works. And then he got together with a lot of interesting people at Woods Hole and learned about it. And his model was basically, I'm going to take this out, and we're going to use it, and we're going to invite scientists to come on board. And so I met him very early on at the beginning of this because he did a few expeditions. And then I was at the time a scientist, a neuroscientist, and we were very interested in these glowing proteins that we use in the ocean. And so I had done some expeditions looking for these things. And we had this really good exhibition at the Museum of Natural History. And in it, we had all this beautiful glowing things and bioluminescence and everything like that. So I was kind of working with the Museum of Natural History. And then Ray Dalio made a donation to the museum and said, here's some money, and put out a request amongst your scientists if they want to come and do this kind of ocean work on the ship. So I got a call from my friends. I was kind of an adjunct there at the museum. And they said, we've done these expeditions. You want to go work with this guy? I didn't know who he was or anything. I said, sure. So we put a application in, got the grant, and worked for about 6-8 months building equipment, all this kind of cool stuff. Went to the Solomon Islands with Ray on the boat. Spent about 2.5 weeks there doing magnificent work in this beautiful place, science, samples, everything. And then the last day or two, Ray showed up on the boat, wanted to see what was going on because he kept hearing all these good things about it. So he came, and I met him, and we spent an evening together, like a dinner. He brought me up back on the boat. We were all staying on shore in Honey Airy. And I came back on the boat. Anyways, ate dinner with him, met him, just was like amazed by him as a person. In all fairness, I really didn't know much about him. And I thought, it's just another finance guy, And, but he has this very, very interesting way of thinking. He's written a lot about it. He's got a very principled, very organized thought process. And I came away thinking, this is a guy who's basically a scientist. The way he evaluates things and his logic. If you read the books, it's a lot about rational thought, which seemed to me, I said, it sounds like you're talking like a scientist here, And I think he has an affinity for the sciences. I really think in another life he would have been a great scientist as well. Anyway, so he and I began like a friendship that lasted several years, where he would invite me out on the boat on some expeditions and some other things to see how things were going, and we sort of became friends over the next couple of years. And then at one point he just said, hey, do you want to join, this organization? At the time it was called Alusha Productions. And I said, I got a job. I'm a professor, I'm a full-time neuroscience professor. And what do I know about the ocean? And he said, well, you got a head on you for science, so why don't you come and join? So I joined the program around 2017 full-time as an employee, but I met him back in 2013. And he said, oh, you're in charge of the whole thing. And I was like, okay, that's shocking. So I was still a professor, remain a professor today. But he said, come on and let's do this thing. And then immediately he said, let's buy a new boat. We need a bigger boat, So that became the sort of vision. And what he said to me was, and what I learned on the boat was that he really felt that science was needed. The science of the ocean needed a visual component to it. It needed a way to translate it. And I remember him saying, like, there's a lot of science papers published about the world, and yet the world doesn't listen, right? So, and I remember thinking to myself that year there was something like 11,000 papers published on climate. And why are we still, the science, I'll say this and probably nobody will want to hear it, but the science around climate is pretty settled, right? We know what's going on. And a lot of ocean themes, unfortunately, the science of human-inflicted problems is settled. Now, oceanography is not settled, but what we're doing to the ocean is settled. We shouldn't. We're overfishing. We're polluting. Plastic. But you know it. The list, right? Yep. So doing more science on the impact of that is important, but solutions are the most important thing at this point, and getting the word out and letting people know that this is not going well, and we have to change. So OceanX was really built to, first and foremost, to celebrate the ocean, to make sure that the old quote, you don't protect what you don't love, and you got to make them love it. And Cousteau made us love it. Ray, my generation, we just loved 100%. The way he visualized in this. So this was kind of like, let's do a Cousteau moment in a modern, updated version of Cousteau, right? Yeah. So let's show the world. Let's make the world fall in love with the ocean, and then protection will follow. And so that was it. Then the idea was doing great science. And Ray, the first time I met with him, he gave me this Venn diagram, and the Venn diagram was great science and great media. And in the middle was only, and what was happening was we were doing great science, but it wasn't visually compelling. And then the visually compelling visual compelling work didn't always have the best science involved. So my job was to find that middle ground, find the stuff that was exciting, scientifically valid, and was helping the world, was helping show stories. So for the first few years of OceanX, we just really built up a following. First, we created the company. We built this amazing vessel. We had COVID, blah, blah, blah. But then we started doing expeditions, and the vessel has been focused really on just exciting the world. But in the background, all the science that we were doing always had, and the messaging we always had, was about conservation of the ocean and stewardship. But of late, we've begun to sort of pivot our messaging, and that's actually quite new. And the pivot is to spend more of our effort now trying to talk about what needs to be done in the ocean and the science we're doing, because we've become such a popular organization. I mean, we're sort of almost a victim of our own success, that we're being asked by governments, like, what can we do? And how can we help? And how can OceanX help us meet our goals in the ocean? So we have begun to rethink a bit our mission, because we have built this unique position for ourselves, this platform, right? By really showing the beauty of science, showing the beauty of the ocean, we're in a position to help make change. So our sort of pivot is around making change, around talking more about the things that we need to do. So we don't want to be, the Debbie Downer, right? Because the ocean, I could sit here all night and talk to you about the terrible things that we do to the ocean. Yeah. And honestly,
and that you see, like, when you're out on the expeditions too, right?
You do. You see it, and it's evident, but there is a reversal. We can reverse all this, So our thing is, like, let's just get everybody excited about it, because the first step is that, and then we have to have the solutions, right? So OceanX has become an organization which wants to utilize its tools to help governments understand what it has, because we go to a place that they don't know anything about their ocean, and we want to say, like, your ocean is super valuable, and super valuable not just in an extractive manner, right?
Yes, not like a natural resource matter.
it's not like just
Yeah.
a place to start digging stuff out of. You got oil, you got this, you got fish, right? We need to like chill on that in a way, right? Valuable, but it needs to be, the word sustainability is just overused and sounds like a bad word these days. First we were just stop everything, and then we said, oh, let's do it sustainably. But sustainably has become this thing. But the point really is that we're now at this stage where we really need to find alternatives. We need to find alternative value in the ocean, right? So they need to start thinking, everybody needs to start thinking about the value of the genetic diversity of the ocean, about the value it provides in terms of food stability and all these things that it does. And how's the modern view of the ocean? What is the modern view? There's tourism in the ocean, right? There's coastal resilience against these changing hurricanes that we have. We got another one heading up the Gulf right now, right?
Very scary.
Smashed through Florida. There's another one heading there. The Gulf water is like an incubator for these terrible things.
Yeah.
So coastal resilience is all about not taking away those mangroves and not taking away those wetlands.
Seagrass beds and
exactly the seagrass beds and the bearing of the carbon and the whole thing is there in a nutshell. So we really take on as our mission the enlivening of these stories and the enlivening of the ocean. And we have all of the creature feature stuff. We have all the cool animals. You just can't get in a submarine or go down to the bottom of the ocean without something amazing dropping in your lap. So like the job, it just does itself, right? So we're out there doing one thing and something else happens. And the series that we just finished with National Geographic and BBC and Jim Cameron is that story of half the things that are in that show are not what we went out to film, right? We said, we're going to go see these humpback whales and we're going to study their language. And we did that. But on top of it, these things happen. And if you watch the show, you get a sense of what that was, that nature just pulls something out of a hat. So it's an easy job to excite people about the ocean. I say it's easy. It's easy in the sense that when you have amazing
agreed.
vessels, right?
Yeah.
But the ocean never ceases to amaze any of us, even old people like us. So OceanX is really this unique. We realize that still even to this day, there isn't an organization that's really dedicated to almost be the PR for the ocean. And at the same time, a convener of people, of partnerships, of bringing people together to understand that these solutions are out there. We can solve these problems we have in the ocean. We can have our cake and eat it. It's not that we have to stop. We just have to understand it better, and we have to understand how to treasure it for what it really is. And I just think that all these astronauts, that go into space and look down on the Earth, they're just like, and that Captain Kirk, when he went into space, William Shatner, and just said, like, I've been looking the wrong direction,
Yeah.
Space is beautiful, but the ocean and the planet is just an incubator. As some say, it's like this little, thing that keeps us alive as we're moving through the deadness of the space around us. And the excitement is right here under our feet. And
100%.
I think this generation, I'm so excited of this younger generation. There's just a whole lot of criticism, but they're our best clients. They're the ones that feel it in their heart, and they're the ones that like will go out in life and do things. Everything they do, they'll try to bring this love of nature and this, this discipline and this what they need is a kind of a respect and a thought that has to enter their mind. My generation, it didn't enter your mind to take care of the world, planet. They have that. That's a brilliant, that's going to save the earth, honestly. So I think our generation gave them the tools to understand it. So anyways, it's an exciting endeavor, traveling the world and doing that. It never ceases to be anything but a thrill. I pinch myself. Just today I was out with a contingent of people and they said, you must have the greatest job in the world. And I was like, I'm sorry to say, but I do. I don't know how it happened in my life. I don't know what I did right that this landed in my lap, but it is truly, it's truly a pleasure and an honor, and it's an honor to bring it to the world. So,
Well, I'm sure, through the things that happen in the world, you set yourself up to be there for that opportunity, and that's how it all came to be. So I'm sure that you did something, not realizing it, but it ended up being in a good way. Even just being a good conversationalist, with Ray. So that's always.
Ray, I have to say that. It was Ray appreciated the ability to interpret science as a scientist and not speak always like a scientist, but rather at my stage in life. I've had to explain it so much in giving lectures and speaking to people that I get a sense of where you reach a certain understanding in science, I think, where you no longer have to impress anybody with what you know, but you have an understanding of the top to bottom, from the molecules all the way to the organization.
Right.
Not to say that you understand it, but there's a kind of
Right.
a thread line that you kind
Yes.
of can explain in a way. There's a logic,
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
process, and that's a beauty when you see it. And if people, I feel a little bit like Salieri, the guy from the Mozart movie, where you're witness with science as a scientist, you're witness to the greatness of the world, the greatness of things. But sometimes the audience doesn't get it.
True.
Like, I cannot understand why you wouldn't protect the ocean. To me, it's an absolutely fantastic, amazing. It is just like the most rich thing on the earth, and so that I don't understand why the world doesn't see that the same way. Now, the world's got a lot of other problems to deal with, right? So I get it, but on the other hand,
Yeah.
it's so foundational to the human species.
Agreed. Well, I find also, though, like we've been brought up to understand and learn and especially as scientists to communicate the problems that we're facing in the ocean and on this planet. And so we have been a doom and gloom. Like, I'm Generation X, almost like at that cusp of Generation X and millennial. I was 78, baby. And, you hear about the climate change. And I've been hearing about climate change my entire life, from the 90s all the way to now. And now we're really starting to see, we started to see the effects, but now it's really kind of coming in. Like, it's undeniable at this point, over the last 10 years or so. But I find, though, we've been in such a state of doom and gloom for the last, 30, 40 years of my life anyway, that a lot of times we kind of hide the solutions to the end. Like, I always say, like, a lot of documentaries that you see in the past, they would go through, oh, here's the beauty of the ocean, okay, and then here's the problem as a regular storytelling thing. Here's the problem, and here's sort of like where we're seeing at the cusp, and we got to do something, but we're not doing something. And then at the tail end, after that climax of the story, we start to hear a little bit about the solution, but there's not a lot of time spent on the solution.
Yeah.
So that's why when you're telling me that OceanX is pivoting the messaging to be like, look, we're not only going to make people fall in love with the ocean, but we're going to start talking about the solutions. This excites me because we needed this on a global level, on the platforms where, OceanX working with National Geographic, working with BBC, working with these types of media platforms where you get global coverage to show the beauty of not only the OceanX ship and the mission, but also what you see in that ocean, to be able to talk about solutions on that basis and get people excited. That's the one thing that I've been trying to do on this podcast for a long time is get the stories that you don't normally hear and talk about the successes of, villages in the Philippines being able to adapt to climate by having like a savings bank for their fisheries. So in case their marine protected area gets taken out by a typhoon, they don't have to worry about fishing for a little bit because they've had something stored away, and they can still feed their families, they can still send their kids to school and still take care of themselves while this builds back up, as we hope that it does. And they've been able to feed off of that and then continue to contribute to this. And so, like, hearing solutions like that gets people excited. Like, oh, so we're not in dire need. Like, we're not doomed, in this gloomy kind of situation. No, there are ways that we can build up. And even like, talking about what's about to hit Tampa Bay, with Hurricane Milton, it's looking at the infrastructure of Tampa and looking at the infrastructure of Florida and focusing on being more resilient, making those cities more resilient, even all the way up the southeast and even to where I live in Ontario, Canada. We got the effects of Hurricane Beryl earlier this summer, and we started to see vulnerabilities in flooding because of so much water and so forth. So, we've been talking about these stories and solutions. It'll be great to see those types of solutions get on a global map, on major media, so that people are watching these. So not only are they seeing the beauty of the ocean and maybe some of those consequences that we're seeing, but also the solution to those consequences. So I'm really excited that OceanX is getting involved in that, because you guys have such great production value, such great people that work on that. How do you get solutions, and how do you portray that? Is it like individual stories, or is it like you working with governments? Can you talk a little bit about how that is moving into place?
So I noticed at COP, when I went to COP 27, which was in Egypt, and then COP 28, which was in Dubai, I'd never been to the COP meetings before. Honestly, I went to the COP on a lark just to go see it, and
Right.
being invited there. And I walked around, and it was so inspiring to be there, because sometimes in our country there just seems like there's like half the world doesn't believe in this whole thing, and half the world is fighting against it. But then you go to COP, and you're at this group of people from all over the world, anywhere they are, that understand the problems, and all it is about is solutions to the problems. It's just piles of solutions. Every booth I went to, I was like, oh, you've got hydrogen. Oh, you've got farming. Oh, you've got seaweed. Oh, oh, it's everywhere. It isn't some bespoke thing. It's become a mainstream. Due to the movement, the climate movement, and the thought around it. The fact that what we're asking, though, at the end of the day, to me, and this was an epiphany for me, is that I think that the development of oil and development of petroleum, I tell everyone this, it's probably the greatest thing that the human species has ever done. And I don't think that people want to hear that from an environmental group. But the reality is that has brought it has changed humans in a way. If you study it, how amazing it was. What's changed in terms of lighting, and just starting with lighting, but transportation and food. It's all thanks to petroleum, right?
To be honest, it saved the whales, because that's where we got our energy before.
Whales,
right?
as a thing, and in the end of the day, it was a great uplifter for the entire human race. So it's a very hard thing to say, okay, guys, we got to not do this anymore. And I think that I'm proud to be a scientist, because scientists looked at the problem and said, okay, it's a problem now, but there's still entrenched, not just business, but there's an entrenched thing in that world, because they built such an amazing structure to distribute this oil throughout the world. And it's a bad word today, but in reality, it's an amazing thing. But as a scientist, we just have to look at it and say it's absolutely wrong. And maybe it wasn't wrong when we started it, and it wasn't wrong for the longest time, but now we realize that it's causing damage, serious damage to the earth.
Right.
And you're taking all this carbon that nature has spent billions of years burying, right? And the atmosphere is a result of that, and all of the earth is a result of this carbon being physically buried due to carbon storage over the billions of years. And we're just burning it, shooting it out. And the atmosphere and everything in the ocean is trying to take it, right? And it can't. It just can't take it, right?
True.
And you say, oh, it's a couple of degrees. You hear the IOC, and they're like, oh, it's 2 degrees. I always remind people, 2 degrees is 2 degrees over the earth. It's not it's not like you're frying pan. What's the difference of 2 degrees? But the fact is that we're seeing the effects of that. A couple of degrees in the Gulf of Mexico, and you got Category 5s every day.
Yep.
Category 5. If something gets in that Gulf, it's going to become a Category 5. Right? It's warm. So when I turned the corner when I was actually COP27 on some level, because part of me is I live in this world of problem, especially traveling around the earth and seeing firsthand from it. And I started to see the concept of this hydrogen generation, right? I know that hydrogen sort of had a false start maybe a couple of years ago. People started it. Well, California did stuff with it. It was the first time, and I started to dig into it as alternative fuel. And the whole thing suddenly just came crystal clear to me. There's this material on the earth, hydrogen, which is 80% of the earth is made of hydrogen, right? That is this exchange material between electricity and storage. And electricity, it's like the battery, it's everything, all in one packet. Yeah. And the idea now that, hydrogen is just this exchange feature, right? But the beauty of the idea suddenly became to me that, if you, again, as scientists, you can put aside all the difficulties in society, right? In other words, not the difficulties, it's society accepting things and changing. Yeah. You can just look at it purely academically and say, this is clearly the way to go. There's no doubt about it, right? There's other fuels that can be in the mix, but all the different ways to create this, I always say it's like the ATP, from biology. ATP is all this energy that you eat and the food ends up in your body and ends up as ATP, right? And the ATP is currency exchange. So hydrogen's going to be the exchange, right? We're going to make it all different ways, whether it's solar or wind or geothermal, or we drill it out of the earth, which was another moment that was an epiphany for me. And suddenly we have this fuel that we can use and do, and it's not going to cause any problems for us. It's a different thing, right? And it's suddenly this big, beautiful thing that was oil sees its way to this new thing that has many of the features that will have oil, but it won't have all of the downsides of putting so much carbon into the atmosphere. And carbon in the atmosphere kind of leads to a lot of the problems that we see: the acidification, the heating, the movement of animals because of the time. Carbon's at the heart of a lot of that. Now, having said that, as OceanX is concerned about the pressures on the ocean, carbon and acidification is really only one, unfortunately, of many problems that we have. With pollution, eutrophication, overfishing, right? Terrible in coastal development, plastic pollution, everything. These are all, human anthropogenic issues with the ocean, right? And only climate change is only one of those. But to me, I kept saying, if you can't solve that one, but then I thought, what the beauty of science is that it finds its way through all of this, So it finds ways to solve these epic problems, and that makes me proud to be a scientist, to be one of the people who are on that side of solutions, and all you got to do is take a bunch of young people, put them in a room and tell them to solve a problem. And if they have the freedom in the society, the resources and the audacity, and America, to me, as I travel the world, still retains this. It's not the only country for sure, but it's one of the few countries in the world that has the audacity to just do stuff, to say we're going to try this and follow the leads and fail and fail and fail until we don't fail, And so now I come back to the solutions, as you're mentioning, and I see in each of these areas, we've got solutions to these things, right? It's no longer, I came from biomedical science, right? Alzheimer's disease is a real problem. It doesn't have a solution. Science has not given us a solution to that disease. We've got some drugs that don't work that well. We've got a lot of really smart people studying it. But I can't say to you today that we've got a scientific solution to that horrible problem, right? But I look back in this field and I go wait a minute, we've got a solution for that. We've got bamboo, we got hydrogen, right? We've got plastic bags that dissolve. We've got everything.
There's a lot.
We've got batteries. We've got stuff. We got wind power. We got solar. It isn't one thing, but what it is a lot of smart people. I'm seeing desalination plants that go underwater, fantastic solutions to problems. So, ocean energy from the ocean, the science of it, and all aided by the modern AI and ways to sort of utilize all this stuff. So to me, it's the problems are kind of all solved, and the money is now to be made. And that's the part that also makes me very excited, is that, the power of the economy, and Ray has always driven that home to me, is philanthropy is great. It kind of shines a light. It kind of is, it's like a risk capital. But when you want things to happen, you got to get it into the private sector. You got to get it to the larger global markets. That's where all the money is. That's where the things happen. And so I start to see how the global market's responding to this in a way. They have to, right? But also there's investment potential and government regulation, which is a good thing in many cases. Nobody wants to hear that either. But, seatbelts were a good idea. That was a government regulation. Car companies didn't, hey, let's save people's lives, right? Unfortunately. And Ralph Nader, will talk your ear off on that, about how, having airbags was going to kill the American car. Didn't. And what do we do now? Now we sell airbags. Oh, I got 12. Yeah. Well, I got 13 airbags. Right? So when
now it's a selling feature. Yeah,
it's a selling feature, right? Volvo was doing well because it was safe cars. Oh, maybe we should make safe cars, right? So it's all temporal, at the time.
For sure.
If you go back and look at those hearings in the 70s, he's killing the car companies. He's going to ruin it. It can't happen. We can't. How can we inflate a bag in 35 milliseconds? You don't hear anything about it anymore. It's gone. No. That'll be our grandchildren will all be going what were you guys talking about? It's all done, right? So it's this transition period, but transitions are times to make money. So when you go back to that, I think that Ray is a unique position as this really global scion of finance and world economics, and he's a behind the scenes guy, everything, understanding how things are working, and people go to him as and I learned that you can see it beginning. These solutions are leaving the realm of the kind of startups and the venture capitals, and they're getting into you see that Korea has made these massive hydrogen generating devices, these high electrolysis units, and then these fuel cells. You can run a ship. They've got trains running on fuel cells, right? They're making enough energy to store, right? It's just, you just see,
it's incredible.
Big, and I think now's the moment, right? There are going to be people years from now, they're going to say, how do those hydrogen companies get so rich? Now's the chance to get on that bandwagon. Now the Rockefellers, of today are the people
Yeah.
who are not waiting around and saying, let's
Right.
move, right? And
Yeah.
so I think there's money to be made. And I'm not saying that like in a disingenuous way, but like this transition has gone from not doable to you better get in now because soon you're going to miss the train when the
100%.
the seaweed train goes and the fish farms and all the things that are going to help this economy, our worlds shift. And unfortunately, the other issue is, of course, the developed world, sort of the northern hemisphere, will all get there sooner, right? And
Yeah.
so part of my job as I travel around to these places, say Cape Verde for one, is to say like, the way the cell phones have kind of leaped ahead, Starlink is going to leap everybody ahead. Like you got these leaping technologies, and maybe you don't have to go through all the headaches we went through,
Right.
but you better get in on this business because the next Exxon Mobil is going to be in a business, and you should have it here, right?
Exactly.
You should
Yeah.
build, and so like the opportunity to me, like you can name a problem and I can give you a solution, in the climate world and the ocean world. And we work a lot with like World Economic Forum. Again, this is like the people that bring you
Yep.
Davos, which is a big like, oh my God. But they're also got 1,000 startups, 1,000
Yeah.
ocean startups. And there's just
Yeah.
a bunch of smart people. We had them on our boat. We did like a kind of like a tour around. And each one of them, you're just like, oh, so wait a minute. I can use your technology and I can take CO2 out of the atmosphere. I can make hydrogen. I can take seawater. I can bury this CO2 safely in the seawater and get hydrogen out as a byproduct. Win, 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 right? And I'm getting out hydrogen that I can then use. So CO2 down, hydrogen out,
Yeah. Hydrogen out.
and no pH change.
Yeah.
Wow, it actually makes sense because the hydrogen up means you're losing protons and you're putting CO2. Oh, boom, that whole problem solved. The only way, like, oh, wow. And what's the chemistry behind that? And it's a little company in California doing this. You're like, okay. So you see these transitions, and so to me, I started seeing this and thought, well, that's the story, right?
Yeah.
The story is the ocean as a place to be, and also we talk a lot about space and how well they did, how well NASA did, how well SpaceX and everybody does. It's sort of popularizing this place that nobody really wants to go to. I mean, let's be clear, right? I always say there's no like talking raccoons in space, even though there is a marble. We're not finding them when we get there, right? And
Not yet, anyway.
I made this joke, which I always repeat, but I still think it's funny. I said it at a conference where there were some NASA people. I said, that mini series that you're going to do on going to Mars, that 6-part series, and the first part is getting there. Getting there is going to be great, but being there is not going to be, growing potatoes on Mars, right? It's going to be real boring because it's going to be this. Part 2, dust. Part 3, dust. Part 4, rock and dust. It's like it is a lyophilized, dried, dead.
Yeah.
It's the worst nightmare of a place to go, right?
It's not going to be easy.
Elon Musk may want to go there. Good for him. Him and his sperm. He sent his sperm.
Yes.
Everybody sent his sperm out. So him and his sperm can go there. But I'm telling you that I get in a submarine. I go right off the coast here. I'll go down in a submarine and I'll see creatures that scare the hell out of me, right?
Yeah.
And they're amazing and they're magical.
They're amazing.
They're floating through time, right? So I don't need to go into space to see that. In fact, I know that I'm not going to see it, right? Exactly. So to me, the looking upward is I love space. I love the whole thing of it, but it's more than getting there that's kind of interesting. But the being down there underwater is so, it's just organically exciting and beautiful. So.
Well, it's different every time you go, I would imagine, too. And if you're in a submarine, everything is different. Every time you go down, there's something new that you could probably see.
I mean, if you just do the math, right, we've mapped like maybe 3% of the ocean bottom, maybe more. Maybe we're up to 40%. It doesn't even matter with sonographic mapping, right? But most of it is unmapped, just to be clear, with sonographic. But if you go to like visualization, you're about 0.001%. Because the problem with the ocean, of course, is that it doesn't conduct light well, doesn't conduct any radio waves, right? So you can't have GPS down there. You can't have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phones, nothing, right? So you're down there in this void, and the light that you send out of your submarine just goes maybe 4 or 5 meters max. That's how much you can get light out, especially in the dark, which starts, around. So you're in this dark area where you can't, right? But so as you're driving, you see stuff. and you think, oh, I was on a 2 hour dive and I saw 3 strange creatures. That's not a lot.
Yeah.
Well, do the math on that. You only saw. It's not like you went to the Grand Canyon and you looked out, because the Grand Canyon, you look out, you're seeing miles and miles of everything. But underwater, you're seeing 5 meters for 8 hours. So you do the math on the volume you actually witnessed. It's tiny, and yet in that
tiny.
you saw 3 creatures, and the other ones are scared of your lights or your sound. So the place is just livid with life, So we're all playing. OceanX plays a lot with how to sneak up on them. Like I told everybody when we were building the boat, we're building it with a lot of oil company people who build boats, So I was saying, look, the goal of this boat is to sneak up on stuff. It's like to sneak up and witness it, and not make noise. And they were all like, "What? We're drilling, and we're, no, we're not drilling. No hydraulics. No, let's get things quiet, low light, headlights. Like it's sort of like nightclub mood, because you got to move in on them so that they pay attention, So that was okay. I get it. So we made very quiet ROVs, and we made quiet. We put new motors on the subs recently, very quiet, so they don't scare stuff. And then they start to come out. They're shy, and they come out and they see you. Well, you walk around the woods, you don't see a lot of animals. They all run for cover, and they do it even more in the sea. Normally, if if something's bright and making noise, I don't want to be anywhere near it, right? That's a sign that I'm going to get eaten. So but the life that you see when you play these tricks, and you turn the lights out, and you buy luminescence, I mean, it's just, I mean, like I said, I've never taken, I've maybe done 40, 50 sub dives in the past couple of years. It's never nothing. It's always, you may go all the way down, not see anything, all the way up, and you're 15 feet from the surface, and something shows up, and you're just
shows up.
There it is.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so if I'm getting this in terms of the solutions and the stories being told on the ship, and on like what OceanX does, are you trying to bring the solution makers, inspire them on the boat and in the ocean, and start to bring them together to have those conversations? So not only do we get collaboration like you would see in the science world, but you're starting to get an exchange of ideas and start to get that inspiration. Like, look, you could go down in a submarine, or you can do a dive, or you could, look out on the ocean and be out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and be like, this is amazing. Like you can never get, and I'll tell you this, I've been on ships before. There is no better place to see a sunset than on a ship. When there's just the horizon ahead of you, and you see that sunset. I mean, I still think that my favorite sunset, which it didn't really set, was in the Beaufort Sea up in the Arctic in Canada, where it was still light, and you just see the sun go over the horizon for like, it felt like a minute, and then pop back up. Yeah, and then like you never get sunsets like that, like unless you're on a ship. So I totally buy into the inspiration that people feel. Now, with the media aspect of OceanX, will this be filmed? These exchange of ideas and sort of seeing these solution makers, if we want to call them that, being inspired and having those discussions, and like, will those be on like the programs, like the Blue Planet or something similar? Is that what we're looking at? Is that what we're looking at going?
So it's still at the heart of the organization is discovery and exploration. And I spent a lot of time thinking about exploration as a concept. And exploration as a concept, I think, is super valuable in and of itself. But, as we try to solve problems, our ship also is uniquely positioned to help collect the data necessary to solve problems. And I can't overlook that. It's built as a discovery machine. I call it like exploration science is what we tried to maximize. We tried to say, when we put this thing in the water, what's the maximum possibility over the limited time we have at a particular location to film, to collect DNA, to do as much possible viewing. So we built a ship that can pull up at a location. We could put 2 submarines in the water, put an ROV down, do a CTD cast, put a helicopter in the air to do megafauna surveys, and put a team out of scuba divers out on a boat. Everything at once. And we've done this. So the boat gets on site and just everybody goes. It's like a Bond boat, literally. It's like a morning meeting. The night meeting is like, you're 8 o'clock, you're 8:05, you're 8:10, and the RV drops, and everybody's got, and it's like, it becomes like a machine. The scientists first out what's going on here. Like, we can't do this. Like, no. And when we're planning expeditions, I have to say to everybody, like, they're like, oh, well, all we're going to do is this today. I was like, okay, you just plan for that. And then I'm over here, oh, we'll plan for that too, you know. And they get there and they're like, what's going on? We're doing this. I'm like, just you do that. We're doing this. We got a helicopter going up.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking for whales, you know, at the same time, right? So I built it as this discovery machine. That was the overriding, because on the Lucia, the previous vessel, we had to use a lot of the same points to access. You know, we had to launch and recover ROVs and subs all from the same place. So we have separate launch and recovery systems for the helicopters, everything, obviously, right? So we can do everything simultaneously. So it is a discovery machine, and still in my heart, and I think Ray and Mark and both of us agree that discovery still is the heart of the organization, because we have to because we can't even tell people what's out there if we don't know. Like, we just don't even know. Like, I make discoveries on that boat, scientifically valid discoveries. Sometimes they come back to you. We discovered an algae in the Red Sea, right? And I think an algae in the deep. And this algae, you know, it becomes an anomaly. Like, why is algae so deep? Algae, by definition,
needs light.
So it turns out that zooxanthellae, which are the type of algae that live in coral and make them brown and do photosynthesis, they also can eat. You know, they're one of the few creatures on the earth that can eat and do photosynthesis, right? So like plants that also eat, right? So these creatures live in the deep, and instead of doing photosynthesis, because they don't have any chlorophyll left in them, is they just eat food, and they secrete, but they still live symbiotically with the corals in the deep, it seems like. So how are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Why do you need a symbiotic algae in your tissues if you're not doing photosynthesis? Well, we don't know. We think they're digesting food and then secreting a kind of like glycerol or like easier products for the coral to absorb and live off of. So the coral still provides a home, but maybe they become more of a parasite than a symbiotic relationship. Still, the relationship exists. And I thought, oh, that's cool, interesting, esoteric. And then fast forward, I'm applying for DARPA funding to use these algae in a deep sea device that will create power with an algae that can live at that depth and can digest food and secrete glycerol onto an electrode surface that turns glycerol directly into electricity. So there are bioelectrode arrays that you can build. So now suddenly you have a discovery that at the time seemed cool and interesting but not relevant, into building it into a product that will be able to produce 10 watts of power sitting in any environment with no sun and no water movement, almost nothing, to power sensor arrays, for example. You can put these everywhere, and they're non-destructive. They don't have batteries in them, right? So that's the concept of this. I mean, we're working on it in the lab right now. But discovery still opens the door to businesses and industries and ideas that you didn't have. So discovery still is at the heart of what we do. But like I said, we realized that with our prominent visual position as a vessel and what we built, the prominent image of OceanX, and countries are inviting us to come and say, we want you to discover in our waters. And then at the same time, they start asking, like, well, what kind of studies should we do to help protect our waters? Like, what could be done, to help protect the fisheries, to evaluate our fisheries? Like, and how do we find carbon credits in the ocean? We don't know how to do that. So can we help them with that? Can we help them find seagrass beds, right? Because seagrass beds, as you know, are great carbon stores, and they want to destroy them or don't care about them, but they're really valuable to storing carbon. So you can protect those
and biodiversity too.
And biodiversity. I mean, they're like the coral reefs, and they're one of the few plants that lives in the ocean, and they do a magnificent job, and everybody loves it. So there's companies that are looking for these things. We're looking for them. So what we tried to do now is try to bring together both with the technology we have on board the vessel to help countries who. Honestly, the vessel is the best oceanographic vessel in the world, without exception. So even the U.S. and France, we're very proud to say that we built the thing, and thanks to Ray Dalio, and thanks to it is an amazing. Like I said, it can do so much at once, But so any country we go into, we're the best they've ever seen, and we need to help them with that. That we have to turn that into a valuable. That's the goal of the nonprofit, is to go in and help society and help. And in this case, discovery is important. But helping them make the transition to an economy that will think more about the ocean and protect the ocean and view the long-term investment and value the ocean the way it should be. So how can we help them do that? And at the same time, where they're trying to develop as a country, where the country is trying to grow to be a more developed country. So how can we help them do that at the same time? Because they seem to inherently understand the idea that that this exploitive extraction from their waters is not good.
Right.
And also, in some cases, it's become difficult. When they're extracting so much fish, and if it's a place that lives on fish, there are many of these Southeast Asian countries
for sure.
eat fish, right? And they're losing it, right? And it's more of an issue, not just a financial issue, but a country that can't feed its populace. Some countries in the Southeast Asia get 40% of their protein from fish, and the fish are going away. First of all, they're leaving the waters, but also they've been overfished dramatically, right? So they can't do that, and they think like, well, they need more fish for the economy, and on the other hand, the more fish they take, the less they have. I mean, it's a terrible thing, but we say maybe we can find a way to reduce the take, or take in certain areas, protect other areas, and there are examples of places in the U.S. have done it, other countries have done it, where they protected fisheries, and the fisheries can, rebound and get to a kind of a stable level of production where they're not showing a decline. And if you look at values, for example, of effort put in, amount of fishing boats versus fish, you normally used to see this: the more fishing boats, the more fish. Now you just see that starting to plateau, and you're piling more fishing boats, and you're not getting any fish out because you fish that limit. In the cod fisheries in the North Atlantic were our wake-up call as a world, but especially the Atlantic hemisphere, that we can't just do that. We've been hunting those animals for 1,000 years, and now we just can't do. They're gone, right?
They're gone.
So we can use a lot of our bad experience, and I think for example, we spent a lot of time in the Florida Keys, and I grew up in Florida, and Florida has done a terrible job, and I'm saying it here, at protecting its natural resources. And I imagine, when I was young and we go to the Keys, you couldn't throw a rock, you didn't hit a dive spot, you didn't have a dive shot.
Yeah.
It could have grown into the largest dive site in the world, right? Because it had driving access. It's the only coral reef that America owns, except for what's in Hawaii, right? But it's and it's one of the largest barrier reefs. Well, it is destroyed. No matter what the Florida Tourism Bureau might want to tell you, it's not on the top list for anybody to dive in the Caribbean. No, so if you go to a dive magazine, you say top dive spots, they're going to say Bonaire, they're going to say Turks and Caicos, they're going to say, and that's basically, every time I see that, it's like Big Pine Key, it's Lou Key, it's all the keys could have been in that list, and they're not anymore because of everything they did. And so you go to a foreign country and you're like, look, I can tell you how to ruin your coral reef. You overfish it, which we did in Florida, right? Put anchors down all you want in Florida. We stopped doing that recently, right? You can nutrify the water by polluting, and you can pump raw sewage out of Miami, processed sewage outside of Miami Bay. Still to this day, we pump sewage into Miami Bay, right? You can do those things. And let me show you what it looks like. In my time, in the 70s, I dove there, and it was crazy. And then we had a trip to Cuba. And I say that's a real kick in the gut for a real red meat state like Florida. That they don't love Fidel Castro and his Cuba, but I'll tell you, Fidel Castro did a better job of protecting the waters around Cuba.
He did.
And I'm going to get killed for saying this, but I dove in that area. We were talking about it earlier. Saltwater crocs, you've got whales, you've got bait balls. You've got the thing that you had in Florida. It's gone, right, in Florida. And that's 90 miles off the coast. So it's not a climate change issue in Florida. Those reefs were actively destroyed by, and there's a lot of great people down there working. Now we've got this disease running down the coast. I mean, I have to say, I went down there and dove. I hadn't dove 20 years there. And when we brought Alicia there, we did this very extensive set of experiments all the way from Dry Tortuga up to Miami Bay. And we went that direction because we didn't want to drag the disease with us as we went down. We were recommended, if you're going to dive in the diseased parts of the water, don't. So I did that. I said, of all the places I've been in the world, I've never seen in a country like the United States, like, why would we do that, And I'm on the boat, and we're having these press conferences, and the beauty of being OceanX is, like, nobody owns us, right?
Right.
So some of the laboratories that we worked with there, they're all state funded, and they're okay. The mouth shut. I don't keep my mouth shut. Now they're debating whether they should ban certain types of sunblock. And I was saying to the guy, like, are you kidding me? Can you look in the water out there? And am I sure that changing sunblock is going to protect your reef? No. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, if you put sunblock in a tank with fish, with reef, it kills them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but you know, okay, you go ahead, but you got a patient underwater there that's like on life support. So can you just not do everything you can possibly do to revive this thing? Or are you just going to argue with me about whether sunscreen, which blocks the sun rays, is from getting to your skin, and corals need sun? So I don't know. Logically, it makes sense to me. And I'm saying, like, alternatives are out there. And by the way,
so true.
They use them in Mexico.
Yeah.
So for all your complaints, the Mexicans figured this stuff out, and Florida's arguing the point. Like, really, I mean, they're literally nailing the coffin. So I realized that those points, that the messaging that we do at OceanX is even more important than the science. Because what I was surrounded by were those amazing scientists studying these diseased coral. And I'm like, guys, like, it's like the economy, stupid. You know, like, it is, that's the problem is facing you there. You know that you screwed up the Everglades, that you let, so like I go to other countries, and I'm like, I'm not here to tell you in your developing country how America does things better. Of course. And you know, they don't want to hear that. And you know what? We don't tell them that because we didn't do that. You know, I can't stand there and go, let me bring you to the Florida Reef and show you how beautiful it is, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I won't be allowed to go to Florida again, but on the other hand, like, please stop. Stop.
Yeah, it's true.
Reef. And they've got this huge multi-billion-dollar plan to try to fix the Everglades. Where is it? They've got to fix the problem that they made. So, you know, I think that we have case studies in that direction. And then you got Cuba right across the water, you know? So I think that in the thing about OceanX, which is beautiful for me as a person to have witnessed all of this everywhere, whether it's the Red Sea or the Indo-Pacific or the Arctic or, you know, the Antarctic, or I've been in all the oceans. I've seen it all firsthand, you know, from a submarine. I've talked to everybody about it, right? So it's not a fake news thing. It's like I've lived it, seen it.
Yeah.
A lot of people have. I'm not the only one. Scientists do it, but OceanX has given me the unique opportunity to be there and to look at all that, and but then to see that in enlightened societies think about it, right? Think about waste treatment. You know, the Florida Keys had septic systems on the Keys. I mean, what were you thinking? These are islands made of, you know, coral, sandstone.
Very sensitive to change. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to put, you know, E. coli down there, and you think it's not going to get out into of course, it nutrified the whole area, right? And you're going to block the water that's filtered through the Everglades, and now you're getting fertilizer. I mean, so, you know, you see these things, and you see countries that are really trying hard to avoid those problems. And that, to me, is just that solution happening right there. So to kind of bring that message is what I think is great. And then to bring the technology, but it's more than technology, it's a way of thinking, which it's a societal way of thinking. So to say to them, like, for sure, Western culture doesn't have the answer to these problems. We have answers by the fact that we did things wrong. And so what I'm going to ask of you is to just feel in your heart, what is your heart telling you? And then let us help you with the technology. Let us help you see the solutions to your problems, and maybe we can solve it together. And that kind of is what I think the message is.
Well, I think also there's that side, which is, I think, is a very admirable side, because we need more solutions. We need more people. Not only do we have the solution, but we need more people putting those solutions into place, whether it be through business, whether it be nonprofit, for-profit businesses, but basically putting those solutions so that people see it, right? So we need to see these, you know, kelp-made clothing, and we need to see the ways
bamboo.
Bamboo and no more single-use plastic, but the alternatives to that, not just so that we regulate, which we still need to do, regulate and ban some of those materials, but also offer those alternatives so it's not difficult to find, right? And be able to go out and find it, which is great. But I think the other side, which is a huge side too, is to educate and inspire the people who are watching this message. There are people out there who want to know more about the ocean. There are people who are out there who don't want to just know about the doom and gloom, but they crave those solutions so that they can be like, okay, we're actually on the right track here. There's actually ways to do it. Because I think what happens is the messaging around a lot of these major problems for people who don't want to change is there's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well just, you know, rely on it, you know. And if people see that there are solutions, then they can start to put pressure on the people who are avoiding those solutions, or putting those solutions into play, or putting up barricades to those solutions to say, hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be in those positions of power anymore. And if it's something that's elected, maybe you shouldn't be elected into those positions of power. And maybe we should put people who want more solutions to be put in place, who want to address the problems into place. I feel like there's a definite benefit to that type of messaging that OceanX will be putting out for people to see and just be like, hey, you know what? Like, no, I'm on side of these putting these solutions into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I blame a little bit Hollywood recently because there's a sort of dystopic Hollywood messaging around the future. You know, they've just kind of given up on it, right? And I know that it's easier to write those kind of shows than it is to write.
Yeah.
But I want to think like they're thinking either we're going to have to go back to Little House on the Prairie, we're going to have to give up all of our tech and everything's going to go bad. Because what we're telling you is that you got to give up all this amazing stuff. And that's the dystopic part where you're going to end up chasing zombies or whatever on horseback. You know, like, no, like we don't, the choice isn't that we're going to pollute the world and it's going to be hard. I mean, the Blade Runner, right? The raining and the, oh my God, like it's never sunny out, you know, like it doesn't have to, it can happen. It doesn't have to happen. In fact, we can have both. It's the cake and eating it part that I love to tell the story of, like, just because I'm saying oil's a bad thing doesn't mean I want us to go back to before oil. No. In fact, that's past it. It's moved past it. It's almost like saying, well, should we just go back to killing whales again? Like it's ludicrous. The fact is, and the beauty of all this is the human spirit and the generational. I'm older, but I get to just live in this world of optimism. It's not optimism as much as I see it differently. Like I was saying before, I see it as like this is the time of opportunity because the human species ain't going anywhere, and we're not going back. Nobody's going to accept that. Okay, we're going to go horse and carriage now. No, we're not going to accept that because if you're going to offer horse and carriage or a hydrogen vehicle, I'm taking the hydrogen vehicle, right? I mean, I'm doing that, right? For sure. And so I think that the thing is like it's the real chance to make money. It's the chance to build the new world, and money is a good incentive in a way. The nonprofit space is absolutely essential, like I said, but that letting people know that there's a future and it's going to be a happy future, and we're going to like it just as much. You know, we're going to get over the fact that the car doesn't make the same noise it does when you can put it in there, right? But it doesn't make the same noise. Like you're going to get over that. I mean, I love Bruce Springsteen, but the generation of cars of that muscle car concept, it'll change somehow. Well, there'll be a new concept that comes out of it, but we will find that place, and it's okay. Yeah. It'll be okay. Yep. We'll get there. It'll be great. The world will be even greater, Exactly. And life will come back. I mean, I think the planet renewed will surprise people, Yeah. COVID surprised people. All of a sudden, deers are running around the streets. Like, imagine when we really let the coral reefs come back and the rainforests come back. Oh, I mean, that's a future I would love to see. I was fortunate enough to go to some of these places before some of them are damaged, and there's still some of them that are there. Earth will rebuild itself, but it needs time. It needs us to leave it alone, But that will happen. So the future isn't doom and gloom. It's instead opportunity for the new world, to build the new world. Like, you don't get that opportunity often, Like if you can now build energy systems to compete with ExxonMobil, you're doing good, right? If you can now, let's say that you can make energy, you've got a windmill and you can make energy and you can make hydrogen and you can sell it to your neighbor. You've just beat ExxonMobil, right? Everybody doing this in its own little way, because you can't drill in your backyard and find oil and refine it and sell it. That's in the domain of large companies that take it to places where it is and move it to places where it isn't and refine it. It's a very elaborate process. But now imagine that you have a windmill and you make enough power to make enough hydrogen or electricity to give to your neighbor, or to make enough for yourself, or to power a few cars, or if you've got a dam in a city, you can make enough to drive all the cars in the city, right? Oh, suddenly it's a different playing field for energy. Now suddenly energy becomes open to everybody. And if you're in North Africa right now, you should be sitting around going, we have the sun, and they need energy up in Europe. So let's make the hydrogen, let's put it in pipes, and let's send it up there. And they're going to be making green energy up there, and they don't have to get it from places that are not as pleasant and are they've had that fuel for so long they don't remember how to govern properly because the fuel is just they're so rich with it. So in some places, not all places that have fuel. Of course. But now this changes the balance, right? And it allows you to think more, creative ways to do things. So I think it's a time of opportunity and a time of excitement. I think it could be amongst young people. But the messaging, like you said, like we really can't continue pounding away on the dystopic
Right.
future. It makes for great movies. And I
Yeah.
don't, I don't want to tell Hollywood to do their business. But the fact is, like, that isn't the solution. Like,
That's not the future.
it's not the future.
It's
We
not the
should,
future we want.
yeah, young people are going to be optimistic. Like, I have young children. I have 13 and 15-year-old, and I try to tell them, like, don't worry about that. That is your chance to grab this thing now. And
Yeah.
what's out there with all with computer technology and AI and like hydrogen, all these different things are building this new world that you're going to take and
Yeah.
own. And it's just going to work better, In the end, it's going to take years before everybody can make the change to these things. But so what? It took years to get where we are.
It takes time.
It's nothing, right?
What we're talking about takes time, and it takes people to be inspired, to be optimistic. And I think what OceanX is, the line that OceanX is on and the direction that OceanX is taking, I think is a great way to start this off, to get more people inspired, to get people looking for solutions, look around, and then continuing on and being part of that solution, I think is the future. Like you said, there's opportunity, there's money to be made, and it doesn't have to come at the cost of the environment and of the planet and of the ocean. I think that is probably the perfect way to even sum up what we need to do in our planet and what OceanX is helping to do for our planet with the ship that's going around the world and exploring around the world. So I love that aspect.
I'll tell you and your listeners, send us your solution, your ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And what we'll do is, if we find time or find place or find a location, we'll highlight that concept. We'll be your free advertising, because we're looking at having people come on board that do these things. We're already doing that, bringing them on board and saying, showcase what you're doing. Let's put it down there. Let's visit it. Let's visit the fish farm, seaweed farm, and talk about solutions rather than. And we have a brilliant way. We have these brilliant filmmakers and storytellers in our court. And by the way, they're all gung-ho on the idea because they see it themselves. So we're all gung-ho. We're all this optimistic group there. They just want us to help. So when I talk to the group about, okay, we're going to make this pivot, everybody's like, yes, because we see it. We're not doing it. I mean, the OceanX never been doom and gloom. We've always been like the optimism around the ocean and how beautiful it is. And that's worked. And that's gotten an audience that's like totally enthralled by it. But then we also want to say, like, okay, you love the animals. What can you do to protect them? Is think about, you go out and make some money and start a company that's going to be, but go with that new sensibility that this generation is going to have more than any, that can solve that problem. And
100%. I love this.
And build it and have fun at it, right?
I think that's fantastic. I look forward to seeing this messaging coming out. I think it's going to be something that it's necessary. We need it. We need more of this solution. I think it's filling that need.
And people sort of don't want to be, they don't want to be pointed fingers at. And I don't think, and as a scientist, I don't see a reason to do that. Like, we're all in this ship together, and like, just taking sides, it doesn't work. I used to do AIDS activism when I was younger, around AIDS, when it was such an issue. And we learned early on that what we call disease pitting wasn't going to work. Like saying, oh, cancer needs to get more money. We're all in this boat together of health, and we're all in this boat of the ocean together. And we just, science and technology and social responsible behavior will all lift everybody up. And there's no finger pointing, there's nobody, anybody who's making an effort to make this work better is going to be part of the party. You know what I mean? Anybody who signs up for a better world. So to me, it's just the time to get in on it right now. Get in on the fun, get in on the excitement. And OceanX is just sort of about, if you love the ocean and you don't want to think about climate, you just want to see how beautiful it is, it's a home for that. If you want to see that you don't need to do anything, you just want to see that the world is going to be better, that's what we'll bring to people, because that's what the world is. It's a beautiful place, and keeping it that way through hope and thought and work is what we're all about. So to me, that's what you'll find when you come here.
I love that, and I can't wait to see the messages that are coming out in the future. Love to be a part of that, and looking forward to Vincent having you back on, or anybody from OceanX back on to help tell those stories and share those with this audience, because I know we're looking for lots of solutions. Of people
who would love to talk with you. And I have to say that your show is part of the solution to this problem, and having you out talking to the people to your audience, the way we talk to our audience. Again,
Yeah.
it's part of the team of communicators to communicate the beauty and the solutions and everything about the ocean. And to me, you embody a piece of what we embody, is that we all feel
I appreciate that.
excited and amazed by what the ocean is, and can't help but tell everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I can't wait. We'll definitely team up on some more storytelling, and I'm looking forward to doing that. We definitely are on the same page of that. So thank you so much, Vincent, for spending time.
Pleasure,
I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you taking the time and being able to share all this new and exciting information with our audience. And we look forward to hearing from you again.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Andy.
Thank you, Vincent, for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to be able to hear what OceanX is going to be doing in the future. Thank you for bringing that to me. We really appreciate it. This audience appreciates you and the staff, the work that you guys do. It's amazing to see all this information coming to us. It's something like a dream of a scientist to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take this boat and I'm going to get on it and I'm going to collect all this different information, not only just for me, but it's going to be for the government. That's what I love about this. If you heard Vincent talk, it's not just like going to a coastline of like the Solomon Islands, taking data and bringing it back to the US or North America and saying, hey, we're going to just do whatever we want with this data and not share with it. No, they're going over there and be like, what data do you need to collect? We can be here to collect it with you. And they partner with these countries. This organization partners with these countries, and they say, hey, look, we're here to help you. What can we do? Now they're going to start to say, hey, what solutions are you looking for? And how can we foster that by inspiring people, business leaders, or up-and-coming entrepreneurs to be like, hey, you know what? Do you want to solve a problem? Because that's what business is. Do you want to solve a problem? Let's solve a problem. And what I love about this conversation, it wasn't just promoting OceanX. This was about what OceanX mission is, and that is to help the ocean, help us understand the ocean better, help us find solutions for the ocean. And that's what it's giving us in the future, and I can't wait for that. So again, Vincent, thank you so much for spending time with me today, with our audience today, and telling us about OceanX and its new sort of path and its new mission to bring ocean solutions to us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back on. We look forward to hearing from you and the staff of OceanX in the future on this podcast to be able to tell us all the wonderful solutions that you find, and I'm looking forward to that. So folks, if you love this episode and you want to hear more, you can subscribe or follow however you need to do. You can see us on YouTube, on Spotify. We have video as well on Spotify. We're on Apple, and we're on all your favorite podcasts. And of course, we're on the website speakupforblue.com. You can get access to Beyond Jaws, How to Protect the Ocean, and other podcasts. So you can just go there and enjoy all the different types of content on wildlife and ocean. I want to thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.